look at the issues that medical device companies are facing today, it's kind of different than a lot of other industries, if you will. You have, on one side, you have companies that are selling capital equipment or instrumentation that is all about that proliferation in the hospital, getting lots of usage, getting a lot of different areas to buy in. A lot of issues we hear from companies is that their salespeople are selling the equipment, but out of sight, out of mind. It's sitting, it's dormant, or they're just not getting the caseload that they need because they're getting blocked by political committees or stakeholders that really don't care about the clinical or the science, care more about the economics or how it's going to affect top or bottom line. So it's interesting for salespeople, even when it comes to implantables or hitting their projections on usage of whether it's orthopedics, cardiovascular, what have you, they're dealing with something that a lot of sales folks from other industries don't deal with. And this is an incredible amount of politics. And the biggest issue that we see is almost an alarming thing is that a lot of companies, the way they're going after all these challenges is that they're implementing sales training programs that try to mimic other salespeople from other industries and are basically saying, let's take this dog and get him to act this way, as opposed to saying, how do we implement a process to overcome what we call at Technology Access Partners, all those 11th hour issues? Whether you're doing an evaluation or placing equipment, that issue of after 60 to 90 days where we got to pull the equipment and move it out, committee structures that pop up, political players, it's all about politics, influence, and power. And this is not something that any one salesperson can be trained or created to do. It's a team effort. It takes a lot of coaching, more like sports than like traditional sales outside a device. So when we talk about this concept of navigating stakeholders, the biggest issue we see is that so many reps rely so heavily on their clinical champions. And what are these clinical champions? They could be surgeons, anesthesiologists, ICU directors, who by their very nature don't like politics themselves. So unfortunately, we're lobbying behind people who don't necessarily lobby very well themselves. So we need to work on a process for helping these sales reps, developing a management process for doing more navigating and lobbying ourselves. So if we move to the next slide, we call this micro mapping. It's probably one of, whenever we work with an organization, this is the tool that everybody goes crazy over. It's this concept that if you have an OR director, an ICU director, a surgeon who loves the product, the challenge for most salespeople, and we see it even in the most experienced of reps, great reps who have hit their numbers in the past, people who have really been very successful, but unfortunately there's been a tectonic shift with them. Everything is changing. Things are becoming more political. The red tape is insane how much there is. So what it comes down to is that it's no longer about saying to the surgeon, okay, go fight for me, and developing committee packages and models and giving it to these surgeons. It's working with the reps to help them to start to think outside that box. And it's something that unfortunately when they're in the field, when they're meeting with these directors or surgeons, they don't think about it, so it becomes more of a management tool, more of a process for working with the salespeople to map the hospital. What we've done is when we work with organizations, to the next slide, we use tools like LinkedIn, not just relying on any one stakeholder in a hospital. This is an example of one that we were able to use LinkedIn and tools to even develop what we call a micro map that a rep would then go to their clinical champion. And the reason that we're showing this is because so many times when we work with organizations beyond just the classroom and start looking at their Salesforce.com, breaking into accounts, we see that there's really a limit in who they've gained exposure to. They have a very limited focus. So part of working with any sales team and developing better hospital relationships is what we call know before you go. It's mapping out those players using tools like LinkedIn, like their websites, all these different tools, to almost bring this and become more of a coach or someone who's partnering with their clinical champions versus the old style where the cutter is king. Get them to see the value of the product, and hopefully they're going to go pound their fist and sell it for you. As we move to the next slide, we talk a lot about all these different stakeholders and developing a strategy. One of the issues we see with many organizations is they're trying to train their salespeople to get tougher, to go and meet with these different stakeholders and get them to see the value, to or change the way they see it. The biggest issue we see is that unfortunately most sales reps don't understand the differences between stakeholders. They don't have a strategy for that stakeholder. What are the question sets that I ask? So part of developing the strategy we talk about here is helping sales reps understand, if you meet with a CNO, here's the set of questions, here's the value propositions, here's how to approach that meeting versus if you meet with a CFO. So part of developing this and working with them is creating, like Marty said, the tools, but the other is helping them understand who these people are that they've never had to interface with before. Next slide. Another aspect to all of this, as we talk about politics, influence, and power, it wouldn't be complete if we didn't start, and the reason we want to present today, anyone on the line, is that, again, all of this is about how do we conquer this challenge we're facing at the hospital, these 11th hour issues. What we've done is we've created a way of looking at it we call CBPI. The concept is helping sales reps understand you might have an ICU director, but let's evaluate not just how much they like us and how much they're willing to go fight, but we need a strategy for ensuring that we understand how much political clout they have. One of the things we hear from reps all the time is they met with a particular stakeholder who loves them, said, get me the information, I'll get back to you, I should be seeing that other stakeholder in a week, I'll meet with the CFO, and then they go months and months and it stretches out the sales cycle because that person who's a great champion or coach never had access. And part of the reason we see that these sales cycles are extended is really just because the sales reps are not lobbying behind the right people. Their idea of the right person, we see this across the board from implantables to bracing products to capital equipment. If you ask a rep, what makes a great champion? It's really a matter of they love us, but that's not enough. Do they have the political power? So part of it, as we go to the next slide, is evaluating the organizational structure in a hospital and working with a rep. Again, all of this is not meant to be train them for a day and go send them out with these tools. It's meant to be coaching tools to really be able to look at high value opportunities and evaluate the political structure in an organization.